Bhagavane, Nirisa Nisa Bhagavane, Nisa Nisa Mani Bhagavane.
Loving Sai Ram and greetings from Prashanti Nilayam. Soon it would be Buddha Purnima, and large numbers of Buddhist devotees from many countries of the world would be gathering in Whitefield, which is where Baba is right now. And they would gather there to celebrate Buddha Purnima in the Divine Presence. Swami often refers to Buddha in his discourses, and today I would like to recall some of the things he has been telling us. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna reveals that whenever the practice of Dharma declines, he personally incarnates. Swami has told students that there are other occasions when the Lord does not put in a personal appearance as a Purna avatar. Instead, he wills that an aspect of him takes human form to clean up the mess that is prevailing. Such representatives or special messengers of the Lord are called Amsa avatars or Avadutas, depending upon the particular circumstances. The essential point is that they all come for presiding over a cathartic process, a procedure that becomes necessary on account of the atrophy that has crept into the existing system. Buddha, Christ and Muhammad are all examples of such prophets. To this list we might add Adi Shankara, to whom Swami makes frequent references, especially via the famous bhajan, Bhajagovindam. Now, there is an interesting difference between these various personalities whose names I have just mentioned. Both Buddha, who lived roughly 500 years before Christ, and Christ himself, they did not found any religion. They just reminded people about the path of righteousness that they had forgotten. It was only later that the disciples of these prophets thought fit to found new religions. In the case of Shankara, it was very different. He made sure that there was a renewed interest in the existing religion. Muhammad, on the other hand, founded a new religion. One thing that is common in all these cases is that all these prophets made their appearance when there was a spiritual atrophy of some kind or the other. Let me now focus on Buddha. He was born as Prince Siddhartha, and everyone supposed that one day he would become a ruler. Siddhartha grew up totally insulated from the problems of the world, and then one day by chance when he went out, he had glimpses of the sufferings that man goes through. This deeply troubled him, and as Baba has told us many times, Siddhartha abandoned his family and left the palace to wander in the wide world to find out the reason for man's sufferings. I shall not go into all that now, but concentrate instead on recalling some of the teachings of Buddha as told to us by Swami. Baba says that Buddha tried many things. He went on pilgrimages, he had darshans of sages, he listened to numerous discourses, and so on. But none of this gave him internal peace. He then began to introspect deeply, and that was what brought him enlightenment. Swami tells us that Buddha realized that man is made of the same 5 elements that constitute the universe. Thus, man's being is of the same nature as the universe itself. The universe, having been created by God, is both sacred and pure. Hence, man too is intrinsically sacred and pure. But because of the senses and the mind he has been given, man tends to contaminate the 5 elements within him. Pollution of the 5 elements within automatically leads to pollution of the 5 elements without. Thus, if today we find that the air is polluted, the water is polluted, and that land is being polluted with garbage fillings, and that is because the mind of man is polluted. There was no water pollution before man became excessively greedy. There was no air pollution before man started craving for automobiles and air travel. Buddha realized that it is internal pollution that is the starting point of external pollution. This is a very important point. It is very crucial for us today, and I shall come back to it again. Now for a couple of the Buddha stories that Swami has narrated at various times. Once in his wanderings, Buddha came to a village where a yajna or Vedic ritual was being performed. As a part of the ceremony, the villagers were preparing to sacrifice an animal. Buddha saw this and advised the villagers not to do so. He told them that it is wrong to kill an animal. The village headman replied that they were not killing the animal but giving it liberation. Buddha was amused by the reply and said, "You are offering liberation to an animal that did not ask for it. Why don't you instead offer that liberation to your aged father or mother who are pining for it? Your claim about offering liberation has no basis in the scriptures. It is false and untrue." That was how Buddha taught the principle of ahimsa or non-violence. Ahimsa was very dear to Buddha, and it is also very dear to our Swami. In fact, one of the very attractive things about Buddhism is the great stress it lays on ahimsa or non-violence. Here I am reminded of an essay by Charles Lamb that I had to study when I was in college. Perhaps you have heard of Charles Lamb in connection with his tales of Shakespeare that he wrote along with Mary Lamb. Charles Lamb was employed as a clerk in the office of the East India Company in London. He was a good essayist, and the essay we had to study related to the roast pig. It describes how Chinese Buddhists took to eating pork or pig's meat. It appears that once there was a fire in the barn of a Chinese farmer, and in that barn there were many pigs. I don't quite know why the farmer was rearing pigs, but apparently there were pigs in his barn. When the fire broke out, this farmer ran to the barn to put out the fire. After much effort, he did put out the fire, and as he was surveying the ruins, his hand accidentally touched a burnt pig. It was very hot, and so to soothe the scalded finger, he put the finger into his mouth. Apparently, he not only felt soothed, but also liked the taste of what was sticking to the finger, that is the roast flesh of the pig. When the burnt carcass had cooled, he tried again, and once again he found the taste of the roast pig meat very much to his liking. He then invited his friends, and they too tasted the burnt flesh and found it appealing. But being Buddhists, they could not kill. So, how to get hold of pig's meat? According to Charles Lamb, the Chinese farmers came up with an ingenious solution: start fires in pigsties. I am sure Lamb meant it to be merely humorous, but there is a message in his story. The message is that man can and does invent clever ways of bypassing dharma when it suits him. I am sure you can come up with any number of examples of your own to illustrate how we devise ingenious ways to avoid following Baba's teachings, especially when we feel that they are inconvenient to us. Now let me go to another story told by Bhagavan about Buddha. It appears that once when Buddha came to a village, all the people there gathered around him and pressed him with invitations to visit their homes and eat at their place. They felt that Buddha's visit would sanctify their home and also bring grace. Present in the crowd was a woman, and when she also made a similar prayer, a large number of men took strong exception and told Buddha that she was an evil woman of loose morals, that she was causing much havoc to the village, and that therefore Buddha should not visit her home. Buddha heard all this silently. He knew why the woman was forced to lead a life of infamy, and also that deep within her, she too craved for dharma. He was also aware that she yearned for his grace. So, Buddha told the objectors, all of you are accusing her of being an evil woman. But who is encouraging her in her evil ways? Is it not you people who are doing that? If you do not extend your patronage to her, how could she pursue a life of evil as you say? Therefore, do not place yourselves on a high pedestal and condemn her. If you, after all the sinning you have done, can invite me to your homes, why can't she? This story has an important moral. We may often claim to be insulated and not connected with the evil that is prevalent in society. But if we search our hearts, we might find that we have been silent abettors. We may scream against corruption, but we might have silently supported it ourselves by giving bribes. We might justify it by saying, oh, there is no other way of getting things done and this is so important, etc. Maybe, but then we do not quite have the right to complain, have we? The same is the case with pollution. We may bitterly complain about pollution, but also drive a car or a scooter that contributes its own generous share to air pollution. This reference to pollution brings me back to a point I had made earlier but put off for a while, namely about internal and external pollution. Today, there are many social activists who organize meetings, protests, and agitation against various forms of pollution, disturbance to eco-balance, etc. All these activists are well-meaning, no doubt, but often these people are quite lax where internal pollution is concerned. They have loose morals and they lead undisciplined personal life. It is tragic that this lapse is not seen as a basic contradiction, and that was the point that Buddha recognized. That is also the point that Swami emphasizes time and again. Incidentally, if you wish to have an in-depth view of the connection between the 5 elements and how Buddha viewed them, I suggest you look up Baba's discourse delivered on the 6th day of the Navaratri festival of the year 2001. That is on 25th October 2001. This discourse, of course, has been broadcast several times on Radio Sai, and the next time you hear it, you might like to pay close attention to it. Getting back to pollution, both internal and external, let us take this business of plastic bags. When it first made its appearance, the plastic bags seemed like such a good thing. But lately, these bags have become a menace, even in a village like Puttaparthi. Many people complain about this menace, and I do too. But then, when I make purchases, I want the shopkeeper to give me a plastic bag. I do not carry a cloth bag from home as I used to years and years ago. Not only that, I want all sorts of things. And I want them because of desire. I make very little effort to control my desires or put a ceiling on them. I am not able to do so because of internal pollution. Desire, craving, the urge to drink, the urge to smoke, the urge to gamble, the urge to buy unnecessarily, conspicuous consumption, etc. are all manifestations of internal pollution. If internal pollution exists, then external pollution has to follow. Today, no one says, let us limit consumption. No one says, let us not have cars but use public transport. No one says, let us cut down on travel. Our entire lifestyle, economy, commerce, etc. are pegged to consumption, and still more consumption. To promote consumerism, the media and the traders promote desire. Thus, for example, the sale of cars keeps going up all the time. If it does not, then industry exerts very hard to make it so. If the number of cars keeps on increasing, will not pollution also rise no matter how much the engine becomes fuel efficient? Even if the car is non-polluting, there are other problems. We need water for washing cars. Imagine washing 1 billion cars once in every 15 days. How much water would that consume? Meanwhile, the population is increasing and people in many parts of the world are without drinking water. Living as I do here in Puttaparthi, I do not have to go very far to see how difficult it is for people in villages that do not receive Sai water to get pure drinking water from other sources. Swami's point is therefore very basic. All this talk about cleaning up the air, water, etc. is not very meaningful as long as only external pollution is addressed. It is important for society to realize that external pollution without first control of internal pollution is doomed to failure at some point or the other. In fact, society must realize that it is internal pollution that is the starting point of all the trouble. But alas, that is not happening. To put it in a nutshell, Buddha realized that since he was made up of the same 5 elements as exist in creation, he ought to live in harmony with them. The elements, as God made them, are pure and sacred. This Swami tells us time and again. Thus, the elements in the body also must be kept as pure as possible. How? This is where the famous Eightfold Way of Buddha becomes important. The Eightfold Prescription of Buddha goes as follows. Now this, O monks, is the noble truth that leads to the cessation of pain. This is the noble Eightfold Way, namely right views, right intention, right speech, right action, right living, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Baba gives us this description in Sanskrit as Samyak Drishti, Samyak Sravanam, etc. At other times he simply says, see no evil, see what is good. Hear no evil, hear what is good, etc. I am sure you are all familiar with this and so I shall not repeat all that here. The message is loud and clear. Unless man moves towards sane and sacred living, as Buddha said then and Swami is saying now, all this business of fighting pollution or reducing pollution would amount to mere temporary fixes. The question mankind should be asking is, do we want temporary fixes or do we want a permanent cure? If it is permanent cure we want, then there is no option but to follow Swami's diktat in toto. One cannot achieve success with the other approaches, all of which aim at having the cake and also eating it. If one imagines that such strategies would work, then it is tantamount to burying one's head in sand. Let us hope that one day in the future, near future perhaps, mankind would wake up to the call that Swami out of infinite compassion is giving us again and again. But mankind will not wake up all that easily, and we devotees would have to play an active role in this matter. This is what I personally believe, and I hope you also agree. Finally, Swami says Buddha Purnima really refers to the day when one's buddhi flowers in full measure and one realizes oneself in totality. That, says Baba, is the real meaning of Buddha Purnima. Let me end with the traditional chant of the Buddhists. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Sangam Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. Swami has explained the meaning of these 3 chants. The first one means, I surrender to Buddhi. The next one means, guided by Buddhi, I then surrender to society. The implication is, I must serve society with love and humility. And the third one means, this way I offer my obeisance to dharma or righteousness. Jai Sai Ram.